I spent Thanksgiving 2025 binge watching season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, something that I previously claimed I wouldn't review or watch. Alright, so back when season 2 was first announced earlier this year to be coming out October 29th, I made a very quick announcement video going over my acknowledgement, my awareness that yeah, season 2 of Hazbin Hotel would be coming out later this year, and I didn't know if I would be able to make a video on it this year. I thought that this would be, I thought this was going to be a review that would come out early 2026, because at the time, my video schedule was very strict. I already knew that season 2 had 8 episodes in it, much like season 1, and I knew that it would premiere October 29th, which would be a Wednesday, and so I assumed every episode would come out every Wednesday. It would be one episode a week, meaning the final episode of season 2 I thought would come out December 17th, which would have been way too close to a video that I had originally planned to come out on Christmas Day, but is instead coming out sometime in early 2026. And so I didn't know if I wanted to review season 2 of Hazbin Hotel in 2025. I thought, yeah, you were gonna have to wait a while. You were gonna have to wait until early 2026 for me to review this thing. However, in order to make up for the lack of a Hazbin Hotel Season 2 review this year, I came up with the idea to make a video reviewing Helluva Boss Season 2, something that I surprisingly didn't cover when I first reviewed this show back in the summer of 2024. As a matter of fact, I don't even think Season 2 was finished when I made my first video on Helluva Boss, and so I've heard a lot of things. I heard a lot of things about Season 2, and it just made me curious as to how bad it truly was. And so we fast forward to around early to mid-October. I finally start watching season 2 of Helluva Boss. I sit through all 12 episodes, and I just absolutely fucking hate it with all of my heart. Helluva Boss Season 2 is genuinely one of the worst pieces of shit I think I've ever had the misfortune of ever sitting through. The first season of Helluva Boss I thought was okay. I thought it was mid. I thought it was mediocre. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it also had a lot of room for improvement in it. I thought it was better than Hazbin Hotel though. The first season of Hazbin Hotel I thought was trash. I thought it was terrible. And so I looked at Helluva Boss Season 1 as being much better than Hazbin Hotel Season 1, and then I went to Helluva Boss Season 2, and I thought it was significantly worse than Season 1 of Helluva Boss, and thinking about it more, I think it might be worse than Hazbin Hotel Season 1. I sat through all 12 episodes of Helluva Boss Season 2, and I hated it so much that near the end I decided, you know what, no, I'm not going to watch or review Hazbin Hotel Season 2. Not only because I hated Helluva Boss Season 2 that much, but also because I felt like there would be nothing new for me to say. I thought there wouldn't be anything new for me to say about Hazbin Hotel Season 2 that I didn't already previously say about Hazbin Hotel Season 1 or both seasons of Helluva Boss. Eventually, there comes a point in time where criticizing the excessive swearing and sex jokes become just as stale and repetitive as the excessive swearing and sex jokes themselves. It would be like if I made a video today going over why Family Guy sucks nowadays, why modern Family Guy is bad and whatever, and I keep going on about like, oh, they treat Meg badly, they hurt Meg, the Griffins are mean to Meg, Peter is mean to Meg, whatever. A lot of the jokes are just haha, Meg sucks, and it's not funny and mean-spirited and whatever, and it's like, in 2013, this was a fresh, unique, valid criticism towards Family Guy. In 2025, it's old news by now. Everyone already knows this. There is nothing new to say about it. Eventually, there came a point in time where criticizing it became just as stale as the thing itself. It's like, yeah, we get it. Family Guy treats Meg like a punching bag, and it's a bad thing. Can we please come up with an original, unique reason to criticize modern-day Family Guy, please?
Lois trips on her chest and grabs her boob! Lame!
I've gotta say, it felt kind of refreshing not watching or caring about Season 2, willingly letting myself get spoiled as to what happens in Season 2. Of course, though, I didn't let myself get 100% spoiled, because there was a little bit of that curiosity lingering on inside of me as to what Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel is like, especially given the fact that Season 2 ended much sooner than I expected. I thought it would be 1 episode a week starting from October 29th. It would be 8 episodes, and the final episode of Season 2 would come out December 17th, 2025. As it turns out, instead of releasing 1 episode a week, they would release 2 episodes a week every Wednesday, which means that Season 2 actually ended significantly earlier on November 19th. And I'm not gonna lie, this played a part in making me curious as to what Season 2 is like. This played a part in me deciding, you know what, I kind of want to watch and review Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel. I didn't know when I would do it, but eventually I decided, fine, I'm going to watch Hazbin Hotel Season 2. I have heard claims that Season 2 is better than Season 1. Even people that hate the show like I do, they can acknowledge that even if they think Season 2 is bad, there is an improvement from Season 1. And all that did was just make me even more curious about Season 2. And that leads us right back to where we started. I spent Thanksgiving 2025 binge watching Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, something that I previously claimed I wouldn't watch or review. And yet here we are. Now, before I go over everything that I want to say about Season 2, I'm just going to say there are going to be spoilers in this video. This is going to be a very spoiler-heavy review of Hazbin Hotel Season 2. I may hate the show, but I don't hate it enough to just willingly spoil important things in it without warning. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to admit something. Season 2 is an improvement over Season 1. It's a small improvement, but it is still an improvement nonetheless. There are moments in Season 2 where I could see the great show that this very clearly wants to be, more so than I did in Season 1. There are ideas, concepts in Season 2 that lead me to believe this could be a great show. Part of the reason why I'm so harsh towards these two shows is because of the large amount of potential that they have. I do believe that these two shows have the potential to be great shows, and unfortunately they aren't. There are so many problems within these two shows that prevent them from being the great cartoons that they could have been. And it gets to a point where I fail to understand how anyone could be a fan of either show. Like, I can understand being a fan of Helluva Boss, the idea of Helluva Boss, this fun comedy cartoon about demon hitmen. I could see someone being a fan of that. I can understand being a fan of that, the idea of Helluva Boss. But then to be a fan of Helluva Boss, the final cartoon, the boring soap drama about the romantic relationship between a bird and a demon, no, I don't understand how anyone could possibly like this. This is objectively garbage. I'm sorry. With Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, I do believe that the show comes a bit closer to being a legitimately good show, if not a great one. But there are still a lot of things that drag it down, unfortunately. However, I will acknowledge that it is an improvement. There is an improvement in quality between season 1 going into season 2. Unlike with season 1 of Hazbin Hotel or season 2 of Helluva Boss, I wasn't really offended by season 2 of Hazbin Hotel. I wasn't offended by its badness or anything like that, because I think it's not as bad as the first season of Hazbin Hotel, and it's a masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2. Like, this is Avatar The Last Airbender when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2, okay? I cannot stress enough how much I hated Helluva Boss Season 2. And so, I know that this is a different show, but it is from the same creator, and it is from the same universe, and I did watch it shortly after Helluva Boss Season 2, so I feel confident in comparing the two. This is a masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2. It's still bad, but it is a much better season than Season 1. It's much better than Season 1, and it's a masterpiece when compared to Helluva Boss Season 2. As a matter of fact, I would probably go as far as to say that this is better than the mostly okay, mediocre first season of Helluva Boss. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel may very well be the best thing Vivian Medrano has ever created in her career thus far, and it's still a 3 out of 10. But hey, it's a step up from Season 1, which I think is a solid 0 out of 10. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel focuses on Charlie Morningstar further trying to convince both the angels in heaven and the demons in hell that redemption is possible. A demon can get redeemed and can go to heaven. At the end of Season 1, we see one of the main characters, Sir Pentious, actually get redeemed. We see him go up into heaven, which proves that redemption is possible. A sinner from hell can get redeemed and can enter heaven. It is possible. This is a plot point that's explored frequently throughout Season 2. As a matter of fact, there's an entire episode of the season that focuses entirely on Sir Pentious in heaven, not showing Charlie or Alistair or Angel Dust or any of the other characters down in hell. It is an episode that takes place entirely in heaven. I'll go over that episode in a little bit. Now, in the final episode of Season 1, Adam, the main villain of the show, or at least he was supposed to be, ends up dying. And so as a result of that, naturally, there would have to be other villains as well to take Adam's place. All of the angel characters in heaven are surprised at Sir Pentious redeeming himself and entering heaven, proving that redemption is indeed possible. And so a majority of the angels are in support of the Hazbin Hotel, the idea of redeeming sinners, the idea of ending the extermination, all except for one character, Lute, who I believe was like close to Adam, who believes that the sinners can never be redeemed no matter what, given the fact that one of them, that being the painfully unfunny, quirky, lol random character Nifty, ended up murdering Adam in the final episode of Season 1. And so, to avenge Adam, Lute believes that the angels should not allow for this redemption stuff to happen, and that they should instead continue on with the exterminations. Admittedly, this could be an interesting idea, and so you would think that Lute would be the villain of Season 2. Except she's not. This whole thing of her wanting to avenge Adam, it's kind of explored a tiny bit in Season 2, but generally it's not really explored all that much. She has this thing where she can see Adam, but like it's just a hallucination. It's in her head. And then she has like a whole song about how she will get revenge on the demons in hell in order to avenge Adam. And it's like, you have this song, and then you decide to do nothing with this plot point for the entirety of season 2. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem if it occurred near the end of season 2, if it occurred around episode 7 or episode 8, but no, this happens in the second episode of season 2. They established this in the second episode. They have this whole song dedicated to it. Dare I say, it's kind of an okay song, actually. And then they do literally nothing with this character, nothing with this plot point for the remainder of season 2. Obviously, this is something that will likely be further explored in season 3, but I don't know, I feel like it's kind of redundant to establish this early on into season 2 and then proceed to do nothing with it for the rest of season 2, only to then further actually flesh it out in season 3. Again, if they established all of this near the end of season 2, around episode 7 or so, then it would be fine, but all of this is established in the second episode of season 2, very early on into the season, and I just find that to be bad writing, which I know we've become accustomed to bad writing in both of these shows, but this just feels like why even establish this early on into season 2 if you proceed to do nothing with it for the remainder of the season? It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. To make a long story short, the main villain of season 2 is not Loot, but instead the 3 V's, Vox, Velvet, and everyone's favorite, Valentino. He's the fan favorite, right? He's the character that everyone loves. Am I wrong on that? More specifically though, it's just Vox that's the main villain. The season starts off with all 3 of them being equally villainous, and then as the season progresses forward, it becomes more and more about Vox and less about Valentino and Velvet. And I mean, I'm not saying there isn't villain potential for these characters. I'm not saying these characters can't be good villains or anything like that. I'm not even saying that they're bad villains for this season. I've seen a lot of people say, both people that love and hate this show, both people that like and dislike season 2, I've seen them say Vox is one of the better things about it, and honestly, I can kind of see that. But at the same time, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a downgrade from having Adam be the big bad villain. I personally found Adam to be a really unfunny character in season 1, so I'm not particularly complaining about his absence in season 2, but even with how unfunny he was, he did give off that big bad villain feel. Like this is the main antagonist of Hazbin Hotel the entire show, and he ends up dying at the end of season 1. And so I can't help but feel that all of the subsequent villains that this show will have just kind of pale in comparison. None of them are gonna have that big bad villain feel that Adam had, if you get what I'm saying. I've seen a lot of people criticize the pacing for Hazbin Hotel, specifically for its first season, and I wish I paid more attention to its pacing when I initially reviewed it back in 2024. Because looking back on it, thinking about it more in retrospect, especially after watching season 2, I do think that yeah, the pacing is a bit too fast. The show starts off establishing that the angels in heaven perform these exterminations to the demons in hell, and so Charlie tries to convince the angels that redemption is possible. They don't have to perform these exterminations anymore, and it makes you think this will be the main central conflict for the entire show. We see Adam, they establish that Adam is the big villain of the show, and so the show focuses on Charlie trying to convince the angels that redemption is possible before the exterminations happen. And then in the hypothetical series serious finale for the show, Charlie succeeds in convincing the angels that redemption is possible. And as for Adam, he either becomes convinced that redemption is possible or he gets defeated, thereby providing audiences with what I want to imagine would be a pretty satisfying serious finale. And instead, the whole thing with taking down Adam and convincing the angels that redemption is possible and stopping the exterminations, all of that is resolved at the end of the first season. This show is going to have 4 seasons. The main conflict of the show was cleared up in the first season, and so the stakes don't feel as high as they did in the first season. It doesn't feel the same. Something is missing. Throughout season 2, all of the angels in heaven except for Lut are shown to be supportive of the redemption idea, the idea of the Hazbin Hotel. And it's like, it feels like this is something that should have been explored in the final season of the show. Whatever, like, the hypothetical final season of Hazbin Hotel. This doesn't feel like something that would be explored in only the second season of the show. The main conflict of the show, what is supposed to be the main conflict of the show, and it ends up getting resolved at the end of the first season. And so the stakes don't really feel as high as they should be for season 2, or presumably for all of the subsequent seasons in general. The whole thing with the 3 Vs, well, more specifically Vox, is he wants more power. That's all that it is. He believes this whole thing of sinners getting redeemed is a whole lot of bullcrap. It's not possible for a sinner to be redeemed and enter heaven. Charlie tries numerous times to convince him that redemption is possible. She tries to prove to him that Serpentius is in heaven. However, she's unable to. And this is where I have to bring up a plot hole that I swear they don't tackle. I swear they don't give any sort of explanation for this. I might be missing out on this, okay? Maybe I'm in the wrong for this, but this is way too big of a plot hole for them to just ignore and not acknowledge. But at the same time, I don't remember ever hearing any explanation for this. Throughout season 2, the angels in heaven are shown with the ability to teleport into hell via a portal. And for some reason, I swear they don't give any explanation for this. They don't just have Serpentius come with them through this portal. I swear they don't give any explanation as to why he can't come through the portals with these angels. Why he can't just appear in person to convince Vox, to convince all of the demons in hell that redemption is possible. They could come up with any excuse that's like, oh, it's only like the high power, high tier angels that are able to teleport into hell. A former sinner who was able to redeem themselves can never go back to hell, that sort of thing. They could give out an explanation like that, and instead they don't. I swear to y'all, they don't. I know that I clown on these 2 shows for their really bad writing, but this is such a massive plot hole. This is like shoot them with the dehydration gun levels of bad writing. That there's no way, man. Against my will, I spent 27 minutes of my night rewatching the second episode of season 2, Storyteller, the episode that focuses on Serpentius in heaven, the episode that I presumed would explain why he can't go through these portals with the other angels. I thought maybe at some point they actually give a proper explanation, but I just wasn't paying attention to it. And then you can only imagine my shock. You can only imagine my surprise when it turns out, no, they don't explain why he can't just go through these portals with the other angels. There's a scene in the episode where one of the angel main characters, one of the heaven main characters, Emily, is showing Serpentius around heaven. And Serpentius asks if he could see his friends to make sure that they're okay. And then Emily's like, no, you can't, unfortunately. And when I got to this scene, I thought, okay, maybe they actually do explain why he can't go through these portals. portals. I wasn't paying attention to it the first time. And then Emily is like, no, you can't go see your friends back in hell. This doesn't happen. This sort of thing doesn't happen. Her words, not mine. She goes on about how Serpentius is special and unique and the first of his kind, the first sinner to be redeemed and enter heaven. And it's like, yeah, that's very cool stuff. Very nice. What the does that have to do with him not being able to go back to hell briefly? I kid you not, this is the closest thing they have to an explanation as to why he can't just go through these portals with the other angels. This doesn't happen. That's Emily's reason. That's the excuse. At no point do they ever properly explain why Serpentius can't go through these portals. He just can't. There's a scene in one episode where the Heaven main characters go down into hell briefly and they open up a portal and all of them go down into the portal except for Serpentius. And it's like, bro, why can't you just go with them? Why can't the show explain, give a good reason as to why he can't go with them? As previously mentioned, Serpentius goes on about his concern for his friends. He misses his friends, he wants to see them again, he wants to make sure that they're okay. And this is your opportunity to briefly see them, to briefly visit Charlie and Angel Dust and whatever to make sure that they're okay. And then he just doesn't go into the portal for some reason. The show never explains once why he can't just go into the portal with the other angels. And now that I think about it, even if there was an actual proper reason why he can't go through these portals, even if it's like, oh, it's only the high tier, high ranked angels that are able to go down into hell, even if that's the case, I want to imagine these characters, the angel characters, would make an exception for Serpentius. They clearly understand the severity of Serpentius being in heaven. They clearly understand that Serpentius is very different from all of the other residents of heaven. And so why can't they just make an exception for him? They understand that he stands out from the other angels in heaven, and yet they can't just make an exception, allow him to briefly go back down into hell to see the other demons, to see Charlie and whatever, to convince Vox that redemption is possible, to prevent the main conflict of season 2 from happening. I'm genuinely at a loss for words for this. This is a professionally made cartoon with a fairly big team behind it. This is a show that has millions and millions of fans. This is a show that is on a major streaming service, and it has a plot hole this bad. I know that not every story is perfect. Even the greatest stories can have imperfections in them. I'm sure people could very easily find plot holes in shows like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad or whatever, but then it's like, this is such a massive plot hole that is never explained at all, and it just leaves me confused to no end. The only reason, the closest thing the show has to a reason as to why Serpentius can't go through these portals is because he's different from the other angels. He's the first of his kind. This doesn't happen, as Emily puts it. And then it's like, that's it? You're not going to further elaborate on that? You're not going to try and correlate that with why he can't go through these portals? Why he can't just briefly visit hell if Emily and all the other characters are able to do it with no problem? What the is up with that? That is awful writing. I'm sorry. Holy crap. I genuinely cannot wrap my head around this. In the first season, Charlie and Maggie are able to go up into heaven. In the second season, it's shown numerous times the angels in heaven are able to go down into hell. They are able to visit hell. So how come this one character that is very clearly important, very clearly a big deal, why is he not allowed to go back down? Why is he not allowed to briefly visit hell? I'm not joking. I rewatched the second episode of this season because I thought maybe I missed out on the explanation. This was something that I thought about while I was watching season 2 for the first time. Why can't they just have Serpentius go through these portals? And then I rewatch episode 2 and you can only imagine my shock when I find out no, they don't explain it whatsoever. They don't explain why he can't go through these portals. He just can't, and that's it. This is your GOAT right here. This is what y'all consider peak. There are tons of people that I want to imagine would consider this their favorite cartoon, if not their favorite show, period. And I just cannot understand that for the life of me. When I go on about the bad writing in both of these shows, I'm not just talking about the excessive swearing and sex jokes. I'm talking about stuff like this. Genuinely really bad, massive plot holes that are never explained. Unbelievable, man. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyways, the 3Vs control most of the media in Hell. Their company, whatever, controls a lot of the media in Hell, and so they are able to successfully convince the citizens of Hell that the Hazbin Hotel is a fake, Charlie is a fraud, whatever, that sort of thing. And so a lot of the guests at the Hazbin Hotel end up leaving it, believing that redemption is a scam, redemption is not possible. And not only that, but Vox manages to convince the demons in Hell to wage war against the angels in heaven as a form of revenge for the exterminations. The main leader of the angels, I don't remember her name. Can I call her God? I know this is obviously not God, but like it's the closest thing to God that's been featured on this show so far without it being God himself. She realizes the mistake that she had made with the exterminations, and so she and the other angels try to apologize for the exterminations. Unfortunately, Vox and a lot of the people in Hell refuse to accept their apology, which, I'm sorry, but that kind of makes sense to an extent. The angels exterminated a lot of demons in Hell, and I mean a lot of them. Charlie successfully convinces them that redemption is possible, and so there's no reason to continue on with the exterminations. And okay, yeah, maybe there are demons that would forgive the angels for the exterminations and go to the Hazbin Hotel to get redeemed, but I want to imagine there would also be demons that wouldn't forgive the angels because of the exterminations, which is, you know, I've got to admit that's kind of valid. Does that not make sense? Maybe they wouldn't take it so far as to wage war against heaven, but I want to imagine there would be demons in Hell that would have a grudge against the angels because of the exterminations. And so I end up looking at this specific part of Vox's evil plan and I think, no, that kind of makes sense actually. He's got a good point there, kind of. Obviously, every other aspect of his evil plan is unacceptable, but this one instance of like, why should we forgive the angels for what they did to us? It's like, you know, that's kind of fair, that's kind of reasonable actually, that's kind of valid. In order to start this war on heaven, Vox gets this massive cannon that he intends to shoot to heaven. In addition to wanting to start a war against heaven, Vox also wants to take control of heaven in addition to hell. And so in order to do that, he gets this cannon that'll allow him to shoot up into heaven. And so it's up to Charlie and the others to stop Vox and his evil plan. Oh yeah, there's also this whole thing where like Alistair gives himself up and becomes a prisoner for Vox. I don't know. I know they established this all the way back in the first season that like, oh, there's this rivalry between Vox and Alistair, but it feels like yet another thing to add to the storyline. I feel like season 2 suffers the same problem that both season 1 of Hazbin Hotel and season 2 of Helluva Boss suffered from. The plot is too cluttered. There are too many things that are happening all at once, and there's not enough time to take it all in. I really hope that for season 3, they get rid of the whole 8 episode per season format, because I feel like that's preventing them from further exploring, further fleshing out these ideas. I've previously criticized this show for having way too many characters to focus on, and season 2 decides to make this worse as there are now several more characters to focus on. There's much more of a focus on Heaven in season 2 when compared to in season 1, and so a lot of the Heaven characters that were present in season 1 but didn't really have a big role in season 1, yeah, now they have a bigger role in season 2, in addition to Sir Pentious being added into the mix. And then we have a new character, Abel, voiced by Patrick Stump, the lead singer of Fall Out Boy. I don't listen to Fall Out Boy, but still, my condolences to any Fall Out Boy fan that's watching this video. And this character does literally nothing for season 2. Quite literally nothing at all. You could remove this character from season 2 and absolutely nothing would change. His whole thing is that he's supposed to be Adam's son, and much like with Lute, this is something that is established early on into the season, in the 2nd episode, and so it makes you think this is gonna be a big thing in season 2, and then, no, that's not the case at all. This is very rarely explored. This whole thing of like, he has to fill in his father's shoes, whatever. It's almost never explored in season 2, and presumably it will be explored in season 3. But then that just makes me question, why establish this early on into season 2? Again, if this was near the end of season 2, then it would be fine. But they established this in the 2nd episode of the season out of 8 episodes. And so besides that, this character serves no purpose at all to the storyline of season 2. He's just a character that exists and that's it. The only other big new character in season 2 is Baxter, who ends up joining the hotel. And his whole thing is that he's a nerd. He's into like science and experiments and whatever, that sort of thing. Not exactly the most original character you could think of, but I mean, like, I wasn't expecting original, unique characters in Hazbin Hotel, a show where a large majority of the characters look very similar to each other and have very similar personalities. Wow, guys, I can't believe it. This image shows the exact same character 3 different times. Isn't that crazy? I remember reading something that Alistair was the very first character ever created for the Helluverse, which honestly, yeah, that makes sense, to be honest. And apparently, she first created Alistair all the way back in 2008, over a decade before the original Hazbin Hotel pilot came out, and over 15 years before it became a proper cartoon. And so, it's not really surprising to me the fact that there are several characters in the show that just kind of remind me of Alistair. I look at Vox and Lucifer and it's like they feel too derivative of Alistair. Whether it be with the way that they act, their personality, or their design, they just feel derivative of Alistair. Like there's not really a whole lot to make them separate, unique characters from Alistair. And while we're on that topic, I'm gonna give Baxter a tiny bit of credit. I think this is a perfectly fine character design. His color palette is good. There aren't too many colors, but there's also not a limited color palette either. And thankfully, there's no in red to be found on this character design, which is a great thing because the last thing that we need is another character that has a primarily red color scheme. And his design is not overly cluttered with unnecessary details. For Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss standards, this is a really good character design. Thank you for that, Baxter. Thank you. Unfortunately though, for most of season 2, please note that I said most of, Baxter isn't really all that important. I guess back when Serpentius was in hell, they used to work together, and then they stopped working together. I don't know. It's not really a super important thing as far as I'm concerned. And it's not until the final episode of season 2 where he gains some importance to the storyline, where he uses his super cool hacking skills to transmit a broadcast of Serpentius in heaven down to the citizens of hell, thereby proving that he is in heaven and redemption is possible. Besides that, yeah, this character serves no purpose at all. You know, to be honest, I feel like I might be a bit too harsh towards Baxter. I think Baxter might be one of the better characters in this show. Not only does he have one of the best character designs on this show, but he's also one of the very, very, very few characters on this show to not swear non-stop. Now that I think about it, Baxter might actually be the GOAT. And now, it's time for me to go over the swearing and sex jokes. Well, actually no, it's mostly just swearing. There are surprisingly very few cheap sex jokes that are found in Season 2. They are still there undeniably, and not once are they ever funny, but there aren't that many in this season compared to in Season 1 or both seasons of Helluva Boss, so thank God for that, man. Unfortunately, the excessive swearing is still there and it's still unfunny, so I'm gonna briefly talk about it.